Okay, now for the last video for while I'm away, and that is putting our two triangles together that we've used up to this point, right? The last lesson that we did, we learned how to use the triangle that related, right, molar mass to grams over moles. Remember, that comes from our definition of the molar mass. Molar mass is equal to a unit of grams per mole. That's how we remember how to build our triangle. But remember, the day before, we learned about how to deal with entities, all right? And that dealt with Avogadro's number, okay? And that triangle, the way I like to write it, is that Avogadro's number, that's that big number, 6.0 times 10 to the 23, is equal to the number of entities per mole, all right? So remember, Avogadro's number, 6.02 times 10 to the 23, has a unit of entities per mole, all right? Which means when we want to find out, when we want to use Avogadro's number, that gives us entities per mole. Remember, we can always get our equations from our units of the numbers that we want to deal with, all right? Entities per mole. So notice how both of these equations have moles in them. And what we're going to do today is we're going to use these equations as pairs, sometimes finding moles in one and putting it into the other, or finding moles in this one and putting it into the other. So sometimes we want to have a question starting with grams, and in the end we want to get to entities. How many entities is that? How many molecules are in so many grams? So we're going to need both of these triangles in order to solve those problems, all right? So don't write this next slide down. Again, remember we were talking about the entities being one of these tiny little pieces, an atom or a molecule or a formula unit. And remember we talked about the mole being 6.02 times 10 to the 3 entities, which then is Avogadro's number. So it gets us entities per mole. So again, that's a useful number. We sometimes want to deal with those things. Don't write this down either. To solve this type of problem, we need to use more than one formula triangle. And again, I don't like this particular version of it. I like to think in terms of just ent, which is entities. I like to write moles, right, for Avogadro's number. Again, I like to write grams, and I like to write moles. And again, I have the molar mass flipped around. That doesn't make any difference. But these are the types of versions that I like, because I like to put the units right into them. Okay, let's go ahead and do some problems. Again, no notes needed to be written yet, but let's just solve some problems. And again, I don't like these versions of the equations. I'm going to get rid of that and turn that into moles, and I'm going to turn this into grams, and I'm going to turn that into moles. Awesome. So let's go ahead and solve this problem. Find the number of formula units. Remember, formula units, that's the small little piece. That's the entity. So we want to find entities in 500 grams of baking soda, sodium bicarbonate. So notice, if I want to just find entities on its own, I need Avogadro's number, which I know I can get that from my table, or I've memorized it. 6.02 times 10 to the 23. That's a number I'm always given. Moles, notice I'm not given any moles. I'm going to have to find some moles. Notice I'm given the substance. Whenever we're given a formula, we can get the molar mass. So I have this, and I have grams. So I have molar mass, and I have grams. My plan is going to be to get moles, and then it's going to be to get entities, all right? So I'm going to do two steps here, okay? I'm going to first take my grams and turn it into moles using the molar mass from equation 1. That's supposed to say mm, molar mass. using this triangle, and then I'm going to take my moles and I'm going to turn it into entities using that Avogadro's number, which is right there. So there's my little map to guide my thinking. Well, if I'm going to need a molar mass, then I might as well calculate it. NaHCO3, 16 times 3, 12.0, 1.0, and 23.0. So 16 times 3 plus 12 plus 1 plus 23 equals 84.0 grams per mole. So what have we done here? We've got our molar mass, which means we're ready to turn it from grams to moles with the molar mass. Let's do that calculation. I have grams and I have the molar mass, and I want to find moles. Moles is equal to grams divided by the molar mass, 500 grams divided by 84.0 grams per mole. 500 divided by 84 equals 5.95. 5.95 moles of that substance. Now we're not done yet, because in the end we want to find the entities. I now have moles from this calculation. I know Avogadro's number, and I want to get entities. Entities is equal to moles times Na. That's the calculation we did the other day. 5.95 moles times 6.02 times 10 to the 23 equals 5.95 times 6.02 EE or EXP 23 equals, and I get here 3.58, and my calculator tells me times 10 to the 24 entities, which is what a formula unit is. And so my final answer is right there, and I had to do 2 steps. Notice for these questions, I have to solve for moles and use the moles in the next equation. So we're putting them together. All right, let's try number 2. Again, I like moles, moles, and grams. Find the number of atoms. Again, we want to get entities in 10 kilograms of helium gas. So I'm starting with a mass, which means I'm starting with this equation. I'm starting with grams. I can turn that kilo into grams. And I'm going to turn that grams into moles using the molar mass. That's this triangle here. Once I have moles, I can convert that moles into entities using Avogadro's number. All right? We want to find the number of atoms. So this is very much like the last one. I am going to need a molar mass, and I'm given the formula. He, that's easy. It's all by itself. I do have to check my periodic table. 4.0 grams per mole. Okay, so I need this equation here. I'm looking for moles. Moles, grams divided by molar mass, 10.0. Remember kilo, 10 to the exponent 3 grams. As soon as you see kilo, put a 10 to the exponent 3. Divided by 4.0. 10 EE 3 divided by 4 equals okay, I got to pause for a minute because I have a technical problem, but I'll be back in a moment. Okay, I'm back. I had a little issue with the smartboard here, but that's okay. So this gets me, oops, I need a color, 2, 5, 0, 0, and that is moles. All right? So again, we've used the first equation to get the moles. Now I'm going to put this moles in here to find the atoms, which again is entities. Entities is equal to moles times Avogadro's number, which is equal to 2500 moles times 6.02 times 10 to the 23. 2500 times 6.02 EE or EXP 23 equals, and I get 1.51 times 10 to the 27 entities, sorry, I got to stick an N in there, entities of HE, which are atoms of HE, and if you leave the unit entities, I'm okay, and I'm sorry about that box going through there. All right. Okay, so that was just like the last one. Let's do a couple where we go the other way. We're going to start with entities and go to mass. We're using the same equations. Again, I like moles. Again, I like grams. And I like moles in the equation. So find the mass. So in the end, I'm going to find mass. That's my last thing I'm going to get. Mass, or sorry, grams. I like to write grams. So last thing I like here is grams. I want to get the grams. I'm starting with the entities. So I'm starting with entities, which means I'm starting with this table. I always know this number, 6.02 times 10 to the 23. So I can put entities and Na together to get moles. Notice how moles are always in the middle. To get from entities to moles, I need the Na. And to get from moles to grams, you can see here, I need the MM, the molar mass. If I need the molar mass, I need the formula, and there it is. So I'm going to use this triangle first, and Na, and then I'm going to use the molar mass. I'm going to get the molar mass anyway, right away, because I'm going to need it. So I like to get all that stuff out of the way. 1/16 1 times 5, 12 times 2. 1 plus 16 plus 5 plus 12 times 2 equals 46 grams per mole, which again is used in the second half of this question. So the number, I'm starting with entities. I know Avogadro's number. I need to find moles. Moles equals, notice, entities divided by Na. Entities divided by Na. Entities. 7.2 times 10 to the 24. Entities. Not right now. And Na is 6.02 times 10 to the 23. And let's calculate that out. Sorry for the writing. 7.2 EXP 24 divided by 6.02 EXP 23 equals, and that gives me 11.96 moles. Plenty of digits here, but that's okay, we'll keep it. The next part says I need to go from moles to grams. Moles to grams. I need the molar mass. In the end, I want to get grams. So my equation needs to be for grams. Notice moles times molar mass. Moles times molar mass. And that gets me moles, 11.96. Molar mass, we already got that, 46.0. So 11.96 times 46 equals 500, and my computer is choking, and 50, and notice we were looking for grams of stuff. All right? So 550 grams. And I don't know why this program is starting up, because I pushed a button. All right. So we're going to have to wait for this to start up, and then we'll do one more example. We're not going to do that activity. That's exciting. These are some homework questions that are assigned at the very end, so you can use this PowerPoint to answer those homework questions. And also there is a sheet that you can do that's on Google Classroom. All right. Finally, there is an assignment that you will be submitting, and you can then work on it once you feel you have practiced up. And its due date is on Google Classroom. All right. So you've got some work to do, and yes, you can always check back at the video if you want to be able to figure out how to do these problems.